Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township Public Meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the Township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, June 16th, 2025 East Lampeter Township Board of Supervisors meeting. I call this meeting to order. I'm joined in the room by Mr. Meyer, Mr. Gallagher, Vice Chair Mike Thornton, and Mr. Rutt. We have no members joining us via Zoom. If you'll rise and join me in a pledge for flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Got agendas in the back, the sign-in sheet. We're going to start the evening off with public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. If there's something on the agenda you want to comment on, you can do so at that time. Is there any public comment for any non-agenda items?
Yes, time at the end as well, or?
Yeah, we have public comment at the end as well, but if you have anything that you want to talk about during the meeting, there's public comment for each item.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to talk about something that's not on the agenda.
Yeah, we can come forward and talk now. It'd be a great time. That way you don't have to sit through the whole meeting. If you state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is James Human. I live at 21 Pleasant Drive with my wife Suzanne. We also own 23 Pleasant Drive, which we're now doing an Airbnb at. The board approved that, so we are thankful for that. Really just coming today to ask about the plans for the streetscape plan, about the proposed road from Bowman to the outlets. We would like to know what the plans are for that road.
Plans for that road have not moved forward to date. So you're right in this area, back in here, back in this development. Across
Yes,
the road, right?
that's it. Yep, right there. Yep.
This would be the roadway here that you're talking about.
That's correct.
Those plans have not moved forward to date. We're focusing on phase 3 right now,
Okay.
and that goes from the Cartoon Network
Okay.
to Bowman Road, in that Bowman Road area.
Do you know a time frame of when that will be talked about, that road there?
I do not know a time frame at this point.
How will that be made public? Will that be mentioned in meetings?
It would be put on the agenda for discussion by the board.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to know because just full transparency as a member of that community and other members of that community, we really don't want that road to go there. It would, you know, we live right against that Amish farm there, and one of the prized possessions of our property is the view. And to take away that beautiful view would just be a travesty, quite frankly, for all the members who live along Pleasant Drive there. Personally, we don't see the reason for it. There's Route 30, there's Rockvale. I mean, there's plenty of access to the outlets there. So we really don't see the need. Maybe the need for a bike path, that's a different story, but a a road with traffic ruining beautiful Lancaster County farmland, we're in total opposition. So whenever we see it come on the agenda, we'll come together and do what we can to try and oppose it. Okay? And that's all I. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If I could also come up and speak.
Sure. Just state your name and get up.
My name is John Fogel. I am their neighbor. So I live on that same street at 17 Pleasant Drive. I think that, so my wife and I, we just bought the house like a year ago. So very exciting. But we are a little just concerned, I think more also for the safety of having a road really close to the back of our house. Not knowing that initially when we bought it, and just considering having kids in the future and just the idea of letting kids run freely in the backyard is just something that I think is one of our main concerns, along with the amazing view that we have right now, the farm in the back. So again, standing in opposition to the plan, and we'll continue to just try to represent our perspective and get updated. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for coming. And that is the goal of these public maps or official maps. So we adopt these so we can say, this is what we'd like to see happen as we move forward in the future. It helps with our planning purposes. So the more feedback we get, better. So thanks for coming tonight. Any other public comment? Anything online? All right, we'll move right into our consent agenda this evening. We've got a full slate on our consent agenda. I'll read through some of the items and then we'll take them all as one motion. So the following items we have item 4A, approval of the June 16th, 2025 Board of Supervisors agenda. Item 4B, approval of the minutes of the Monday, June 2nd, 2025 regular meeting. Item 4C, restatement and time extension for conditionally approved plan 2024-24 Country Acres Campground Maintenance Building. And this would give them until September 14th, 2025 plan. We have item 4D, reinstatement and time extension for conditionally approved plan 2025-02 Lafayette Pavilion, 1920 Woodland Drive. This would reinstate and give us time extension to August 29th, 2025 for this plan. We have item 4E, a time extension provided for action 2024-11 Weiss Gas and Go at 1631 Old Philadelphia Pike. This is their fourth time extension and would give them until October 4th, 2025. This one we'll probably look at again. This one's been hanging out for a while, so we may not approve an extension next time, but we'll see. So this is a time extension for that through October 4th. And then we have item 4F, a time extension for recording of conditionally approved plan 2023-05 Gish Furniture at 2205/2217 Lincoln Highway East. And you'll see this coming up later tonight. So this gives a time extension through September 16th, 2025. We have item 4G, time extension for recording of conditionally approved plan 2024-05 Clark at 2257 Old Philadelphia Pike. How long does this one go to? So this time extension would give them until July 15th, 2025 to record the plans. Then we have item 4H, time extension provided for action 2024-32 Christian Stoltzfus subdivision, 2198 Hobson Road. This is an additional 90 days for the township to take action on this plan. And then we have item 4I, approval to pay invoices from all funds totaling $322,900.95. with some significant items to note here. We have $70,085.04 split 4 ways as our second quarter contributions to our 4 volunteer fire companies, totaling $17,251.26 each. We have $48,902 to Morgan Stanley for monthly pension payments, $14,000 to LEMSA for our second quarter contributions, and $14,000 to Urbane Company for our 2024 audited financial statements. I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through I. I'll second. We have a motion by Mr. Gallagher, a second by Mr. Meyer. Is there any board comment or discussion? Okay. So Mr. Thorne has requested we pull item G out from that consent agenda, and we'll handle that item separately. Is that acceptable to you, Gallagher, Mr. Meyer? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gallagher, second by Mr. Meyer to do consent agenda for items A, B, C, D, E, F, H, and I. Any additional board discussion? Any public comment on these items? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? The motion passes. We'll now take up item 4G, the time extension for Clark at 2257 Old Philadelphia Pike. As stated, that gives them until July 15, 2025. There a motion and a second for this item. So second. Motion by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Gallagher. Any board discussion? Public comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? One abstention by Mr. Thorne. All right, that concludes our consent agenda. Next up, we have item 5, Lancaster Heritage Pathway update from Oak Grove with recommendations and information shared from their public meetings. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ben Godfrey. I'm an engineer with TPD. Pleased to be back in front of you again tonight. I want to update you on how things are going with the Heritage Pathway feasibility study since I was last in front of this board. I'm going to start first with the primary eastern extension of the Lancaster Heritage Pathway, or the PennDOT right-of-way that we call the GOAT path, for 1.5 miles eastern extension from Country Boulevard to Geist. We've worked a few different items along that right-of-way. The first of which was an environmental assessment. I'm pleased to share that we found no significant environmental issues, no archaeological issues, no threatened or endangered species. We have not identified any wetlands or streams within the proposed work. So right now we're putting together an outline of what environmental permitting will be required as the project moves forward. But again, we're happy to share that there's been no major issues identified through our initial screening. We've also been working on some right-of-way research and coordination. We know there was previously some leases where PennDOT will have grazing to take place on the way. We set up a meeting with the PennDOT District 8 right-of-way administrator on March 21st. He confirmed that this time there were no active leases within the right-of-way, so no obstructions to the trail project going forward. PennDOT had previously issued a letter of support for the trail project, which they said they still stand behind the conflicts at this time. As far as he was concerned, as it moves forward, the township would need to apply for a permit because it is the right-of-way. His only concern was if there were to be federal funding involved, that's some complications from that end. But as far as we're aware at this time, the township has no intent of using the federal funding for the project. So again, pleased to share that there's really no major issues in terms of right-of-way coordination. What we're working on next is utility coordination, identifying any underground utilities that may be present within the right-of-way, and working on a conceptual design of the Geist Road trailhead. So those will be the next items that we'll report back and share with this board. Any questions on the GOAT path eastern extension before I move on to the Oak Grove Drive case? So again, looking back a few months when I was last At that time, we were contemplating 3 different concept plans of different side paths, sidewalks, along Oak Grove Drive. You can see on the screen up here, connecting the Heritage Trail from where it is today out to Pitney Road, where the trail was recently built along with farmland. Following that meeting, we scheduled a design workshop with all residents along Oak Grove Drive, immediately adjacent parcels of Pitney Road. All homeowners, all residents were sent flyers to their house to attend the workshop, which was held in a space on April 8th. We were very pleased with the turnout. We had 20 residents attend in person and 1 person attend via Zoom, and they were extremely engaged in the process. They took time to listen to what we were working on, to take a close look at the plans, and to offer us feedback both of the big picture of the project and then the specific design details of the concept plans we are sharing. So based on this feedback, we came up with a modified design, which I'm presenting here tonight on the screen. So if you recall, 3 concept plans we shared, 2 of them involved one-way traffic pattern, Oak Grove Drive. Based on the feedback we received, increasing traffic or changing local traffic flow, we've moved away from that one-way traffic pattern. Similarly, currently at the existing Oak Grove Drive lane, there's a triangular shaped grass island. We presented 2 concepts that showed eliminating that island and creating a T intersection there. But the feedback we heard from the immediate neighbors there were concerns about the immediately adjacent properties and how that is used today. So we revised the concepts to keep that triangular to this today, avoid any changes to that intersection. With maintaining 2-way traffic there, we do recommend that parking be formally restricted along both sides of Oak Grove Drive to make sure that emergency access is maintained at all times. And the last bit of major feedback we received that's reflected here, we had presented 2 different concepts, 2 different trail widths. One was a 6-foot width, similar to what you would see for a typical sidewalk width, and one was a wider 12-foot width. With the main trade-off being the 6-foot wide trail really is not conducive to 2 bikes passing in opposing directions or 2 bicycles riding side by side. So with the 6-foot wide path, we were going to recommend that all bicyclists ride in the street and the path be reserved for walkers only. We also presented a 12-foot to accommodate walkers and bikers and have a be consistent with the trail that was recently constructed with there. But questions we heard from the residents were, why is it this binary choice? Why didn't it be 6 feet or 12 feet? We understand why 6 feet may not be sufficient for cyclists, but is there a solution in between that may be less impactful to residents? So if you're doing some further research on our end, the design we're now recommending 10-foot line reduced from the 12-foot line you're previously showing. We feel with the user volume that's expected here that will accommodate the bicyclists and pedestrians without conflicts and reduce the impact of neighboring property owners there. And the final step, separate from the trail, you can see this plan shows a small parking lot at the end. The purpose of the small parking lot is so that trail users come through the trail. Don't park in front of people's houses, don't park up drive or the lane, but instead of a dedicated parking just for trail users. We had some questions from the residents about people congregating there after dark, about using it for non-trail related purposes, potential noise issues. So the last thing we've now incorporated into our plan is we're going to be looking into limited lighting that can be provided at that parking lot to make sure that any rules, regulations the township has can be enforced and there's no security concerns at that parking lot. So we'd like to bring that point for you tonight to get some any final feedback from the board, any residents that attendance. Our next step is to start engineering and design work along this approximate configuration.
So in the parking area, cars pull in and go against potential grass area,
Yes.
and then they turn around and go back.
So that unfortunately is not shown in detail in this plan. We do have a separate plan that I don't have in front of me tonight that does show that in more detail. It's a pretty traditional parking layout with pull-in parking opposite each other on both sides. So as you would pull in, you would make a left or a right to pull into a parking spot and then back out almost like a K turn to exit the parking lot. So it'd be a pretty conventional one aisle.
So there's enough width in there to do the back out and then pull from, okay.
Yeah, and luckily that space was laid out as part of the initial trail design to ensure there was adequate space and stormwater design for that target.
About how many spaces would be in that little parking area?
I believe the conceptual plan showed 10 spaces, either 10 or 16, I believe it was, but again, we'll be finalizing that detail as we move forward, but it's a relatively small parking lot just to accommodate. So
You mentioned that you would prohibit parking on Oak Grove Drive.
yes.
If I drove down there today, how many people would be parking on the street right now?
We, in our observations, we saw pretty minimal parking, typically 1 or 2 vehicles that parked, typically with like 2 feet, 2 wheels to the grass, 2 wheels in the street. It's only a 16-foot wide parkway that accommodates bi-directional traffic, so we were kind of surprised that parking isn't formally prohibited today. Again, we want to make sure there's emergency vehicle access, we would make a formal restriction moving forward. No changes would be proposed to the street width itself. It would maintain the same width of two-way traffic that's out there today.
Areas will be maintained by the property owner adjacent.
Any other questions from the board? Yeah. Any questions or comments from the public?
Again, we ask for you to
If you
do
could-
surveys. I'm sorry, my name is Ramona Whitcroft, Sydney Road. Again, we asked him to do surveys. I didn't hear anything about surveys. I mean, we walk the path, we see how many parking people park in the parking lot way up around the goat circle there. There isn't that many people up there that park. The amount of spaces that you're asking for, I think is outlandish that you have that parking there. That's my concern right now.
My name's Mary Best. I live on Willow Lane. Do I understand that the 10-foot pathway from Pitney Road up, or down rather to Pitney Road, is going to be both for people to walk as well as bikers to use
Yes,
in combination? Isn't that contradictory to what most people, you don't see bikes and people walking together. And we see a lot of bikers in that area.
Yeah, so the core trail, the existing Lancaster Heritage Pathway, does have designated space for bicyclists and walkers. So we know both pedestrians and bicyclists are using that today. And so it would be great if we could maintain that same width with essentially one lane each direction for bikes plus a separate walking lane in this continuation along Oak Grove Drive. But due to space constraints, that width isn't feasible. So this path would accommodate both people walking and riding, but they would share the space, and the 10-foot would be an adequate space for somebody on the bike to pass somebody who's walking. Or 2 bikes to ride something.
Early on in the discussions, when this was initially talked to us about, there was a thought that horse and buggies would also use this path. Are we still thinking that?
Yes, yeah, so I'll distinguish now between the core Lancaster Heritage Pathway that kind of runs perpendicular to Oak Grove Drive. That would have a separate space for a horse and buggy parallel to the walking path is the vision for that pathway. This cross section along Oak Grove Drive would just be the 10-foot wide side that's shown in this plan. but it would connect in that larger multimodal pathway.
I didn't come with prepared remarks, but a lot of things come to mind. And
Name, please.
yeah, I'm sorry, Denise Zabala from Oak Grove Drive. I did some investigation after we heard the presentation, where this all started. Because my big question is, why is there so much emphasis on the East Lampier section? At our meeting, we asked about what's going on Pitney Road. We can't envision what they're talking about from the park on Pitney Road to our road. I mean, the house would be, front door would be right. I don't know how it would happen. But it seems like we're really pushing on this East Lampeter, and I don't think anything's happening in Lancaster Township. I did go down to the park, and I saw what they have planned there. First of all, I saw the little bit that they did where they destroyed a lot of natural woodland to make a path for people. This is supposedly a green idea to make people get out there and walk. And yet we're destroying, we did with the path behind our houses, destroying area where deer and fox and other animals were and are. I've seen some of them on the path. But there's no consideration for them. It's just, this is the best way, because in the park, they want to make there's a driveway now, but they want to make the path over on the other side, which is again destroying grass, woods, and such. On top of all that, in 2020, when we had the first meeting about having the path put in, which all I can see is that was a push by Mr. Hyde. I asked, well, that's going to create a lot of people coming up our street, people that are not from our area, visitors, strange people, who knows? And we were told, oh no, the parking lot is at the other end. Well, now we're talking about people coming from Lancaster City. That's what the plans are, that people can come from Lancaster City, come through the park, come on Pitney, go up our road, go on the path, go to Geist Road, and they can go to jobs in Leola. On our street, they were saying about families. And that's why, you know, they needed this path. Because they said, we've all said, they already ride their bikes on the road. Our kids ride the bikes on the road, they ride their skateboards on the road, we walk on the road. We're fine, but yes, if you're gonna bring a whole bunch of other people into our neighborhood, then we're gonna have problems. And now you wanna put a parking lot at the end of our driveway, at the end of our road. To bring more people, I thought the idea was that they could ride from Lancaster all the way to Leola, but no, now we wanna give them a parking lot at our end, even though there's one at the other end for people to park and what? Right from our road to Leola and back? I don't understand the purpose of the parking lot at the end of our road when there's one at the other end. Another point. I just heard that we wouldn't be allowed to park on our street. Some people only have a driveway for 2 cars. So when you have visitors, they park on the street. So where are we supposed to tell our visitors to park? Go park up at the parking lot? It just really is turning our neighborhood upside down. With this idea that was started back in, as far as I remember now, 2008, from 2 committees that aren't elected. I didn't even know it happened. And we just kind of keep going along and we as citizens and owners and residents on that street wonder if there's any way to stop it. Because obviously something else is behind, pushing and pushing. And I'd like to know, I was told, oh, don't worry about this, this won't happen for a while. Wow, I'm sorry, but I'm seeing a lot of push here in East Lampeter. And it's gonna happen sooner rather than later. So I would like to know personally where the push is coming from before Pitney Road is done. And why do we have to have a parking lot at the end of our street when there is a parking lot at the other end? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the public?
Very good. So these proposals, who makes the decision on it? And funds are the funds township, are they state funds? How is it funded? I guess is one of my questions, but how you made a final decision on the way, or you're presenting it?
So our role in this is we provide the technical information as engineers and planners to recommend to the township decision makers. So this is based on our engineering, this is our engineering recommendation and ultimately the township decision makers.
So really, the homeowners don't have, it is a township right of way. So there's nothing, they're just acknowledging it. I just, as a safety concern, is there any way to put curbs in there for these people that are walking? I mean, I just as a safety thing, or for the kids that ride on their bikes in the area. I mean, it is a narrow road. I know I would be cautious to walk with that much traffic in a very narrow area without curbs. I guess one of our area is one of the few that don't have curbs and sidewalks, which wasn't required in those days.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's my question. I mean, could we do anything to add to it for the safety of the people that are going to use it? Being as narrow as it is.
If I may, that's a great question. It really is. So whereas typical curb to sidewalk with a grass buffer in between might be 2 feet in width, what's shown here on the plan is a 5 foot wide grass buffer between the trail and the pavement, and it's for exactly the reason you're.
Okay. So the mailbox. Okay. So, oh, now I understand it.
Yeah, and it is important, because if the asphalt trail is parallel to the street, we need the driver to see it as an extension of the street. We want to make sure visually it's easy to see the separate, there's a forgetting buffer area between. So it is a wide buffer, typically see it at curved sidewalks.
And their property owners, they will still be responsible of mowing that, even though it's on the right.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be grass that exists today.
Okay. So I ask, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Any comments or questions from the board? I'll just make one comment just to give a little bit of sort of context to this. So the earliest I remember the conversations about this was with some supervisors in Upper Lake Township and East Lampeter back in, I think about 2010, 2011. And then supervisors from both of those boards were also members of the, or at least East Lampeter was a member of the Lancaster Intermunicipal Committee, which is made up of elected representatives from each of the townships in the area. And the LNMC took part of the planning of this as a project to say, all right, let's look at this concept that connects basically all the way from the campus out near Park City through the city, out through East Lampeter Township into Upper Lake Township, and connects areas to try to pull some of the both potentially equestrian or buggy traffic, as well as bikers and pedestrians off of Route 23 and Horseshoe Road, some other areas where people do bike and walk now, but much more dangerous because they have high speeds and are very congested. So how can we use existing land? So let's not take up any farmland, but use existing right of way owned by the government to say, let's put a path there instead of putting another big road there. And so that group then created the conceptual plan, funded that plan, and then the townships have been working off of that plan, making changes to it that fit their local area from East Lampeder to Lancaster City over the years. And basically, as development occurs, you take the opportunity to put in a path when we put in. So when they put in the Walnut Street extension, we said, all right, now is the time to put in the path because it's not going to get put in later. So we put in that. Now we're looking at how do we make those connections between the existing path, take that path and continue eastward up towards Upper Lake Hawk. And then hopefully in the future, maybe Upper Lake Hawk would continue it even further up because the more, and then you want basically parking areas interspersed throughout that. How to connect this down to the Lancaster City Park at Conestoga Pines. They have a conceptual plan to take a bridge across the river and connect up into the high school area in there. So basically, anytime we have an opportunity, we start by planning, getting as much feedback, and then comes the, either we wait for developers or we apply for grant money, whether it's from the county or the state. And if we can find the right combination of funding, the goal is to have the planning and engineering done so that we can start putting pavement down. Because once you start building a path, people start using it. I know me and my kids have used that path frequently, whether it's biking or running or walking summer and winter through there. So it's very familiar with the area. We go to a similar trail section over in West Lampeder Township in a small neighborhood. There's a small parking lot. Sometimes it's hard finding a parking spot because usually the neighbors all park their cars in the little parking spot. But we're regular users of trails like that. And these little sort of pocket sections disperse that so you don't have large congregations of cars in one area. So as you make the connections, then more and more people will start to use them, which we're already seeing. So that's just a little bit of the context of started as, at least there was probably conversations before 2010, but it started in 2010, 2011, and became a plan. Then development happened, and then you got funding, and now we're here with the planning and engineering. So that's just a little context. Anything you want to add?
Star Heritage Pathway was also included in the county's active transportation plan. And it actually goes out to the health campus in East Hempfield Township. So it really traverses the central part of the county. It's intended to be approximately 15 miles long trail that's fully connected from one end to the other. So it encompassed most of the Lancaster Intermunicipal Committee area through the central part of the county.
So that's just a little historical context. All right, any other questions or public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I didn't quite hear the answer to her one question. Why are you pushing East Lampeder when the rest of it is not really being accomplished? As we can see it.
Basically because it's part of we're further ahead in the planning than some of our neighbors are. I know the city has part of their plan. They're in active conversations with the Conestoga Pines Park, as well as the dam that goes over the Conestoga River. So I know it's part of their planning process as well. They're the next neighbor. It's us in Lancaster City. And then I'm not familiar with what's happening out in East Hempfield, but if you go over there, you'll see more trails being built and connecting. So little pieces of this have been done every couple years all along this entire path as part of.
What is Pitney Road?
So
What time though, I guess we're asking is, will theirs be done before ours or?
No.
So the township has funds through the county MPO to study the Pitney Road connection from Oak Grove Drive south on Pitney. Now, we don't know where that will go exactly on Pitney or off of Pitney, and then connecting to Conestoga Pines. That project is beginning to move forward. And all of the residents will be able to voice their opinions through that process as well.
So what you're saying is that the piece, if you're looking at what's going to be first and what's going to be second, the piece from Oak Grove out onto Pitney Road and down towards Conestoga Pines will be first. And then the piece from the city to Conestoga Pines potentially could be second. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm understanding?
So the city is responsible for their portion of the trail. The city, Manheim Township and Lancaster, or excuse me, East Lampeter are joined together in a project to look at moving south along Pitney Road or somewhere along Pitney to get to Conestoga Pines. The other piece of that is looking at Walnut Street itself and continuing the trail along Walnut Street out to Rank Road. And these are studies to look at what's the best route. This isn't construction funding.
So again, who is in charge of the picnic park?
That is a project that's being led by East Lampeter.
So we're doing East Lamp, and we're doing picnic. But.
We're studying it.
Yeah.
It's actually ready to start.
The studies have been presented.
No,
We're ready to start stuff.
of design.
So what we're already doing here, we're getting ready to start on Pitney Road. So the goal is by the time we're ever looking for funding, we would have already studied and gotten feedback and have a plan of here's what we would need to do, here's how many feet, which would allow us to actually build quotes to apply for funding.
Why is it East Lampeter? If, when we call because of an accident on Pitney Road at the traffic light where Pitney and Oak Grove come together towards Conestoga Pines is all city. And so why is East Lampeter doing the Pitney Road piece? Because it doesn't seem to me as if the trail is going to be on the upper end of Pitney where East Lampeter begins.
It's actually a joint project with Manheim Township, the city, and East Lampeter. It's all three municipalities working together.
Township doesn't come in until Walnut Street. What does that have to do with Pitney Road?
But we have the connection at Pitney and Oak Grove, and then we're on the east side of Pitney Road. That's East Lampeter.
Isn't that
Yeah,
the
so
city and not Manheim Township?
Well, Manheim Township's involved because of the connection along Walnut Street.
Which is why so this whole section is like, depending on if you get in an accident, depending on which corner of that intersection is, which police respond, which firefighters respond, which tow truck gets called. And which is why we have an intermunicipal committee, these councils of governments to try to address these things, because any one decision we make impacts the city, impacts Manheim Township and vice versa. So the more we can work together, the better, which is why the county has adopted their plan to encourage us and incentivize us to all work together. So the three of us are working on it, but we're taking the lead on it. Because when we all met.
Taxes at all?
I mean, your county taxes, your state taxes, and your local taxes are gonna pay for all of it at some point, because it's like the money comes from somewhere. It's whether it's any grants from the state come from your taxes, any grants from the county come from the county commissioners control those and they give them back to the municipality. So yes, any trail or road that's built or maintained comes from your taxes in one way, shape, or form. Any other questions?
When will the township vote? I mean, when would this come up to vote for the board? Or how would that?
We're ready to apply for any funding.
Okay.
Whether either applying for a grant, you'll see some come up in tonight's agenda, applying for grants, maybe not tonight's, but typically it comes up, or it'd be in our budget meetings. if we're applying direct funds to something like this. Is there any other thing you want to add, Ralph?
The only other thing I would offer is that Ben and his team are contracted to do design work for the trail from where it ends now at the end of Oak Grove out to Pitney. So in order for his effort to be most productive, he needs to know if this conceptual design is what we want him to actually design.
Yeah, so I'm not asking for final decision on what will be constructed tonight, but should our team move forward with fully engineered plans matching the approximate cross section you're seeing here tonight? So I don't think it requires any formal action for the board, but we're looking for feedback at this point. So we keep we're using the township resources well.
And feedback from the board for the consultant? There's no way to design to still allow for parking along the road for residents. That would be my biggest concern is you're taking something from a resident as a tax-paying resident. Now they no longer have access to park their car, in front of their home if they have a party or a get together. And if the parking lot's full at the trailhead, where are they going to park?
So as we move into more detailed design, we're going to be looking at those types of issues more closely, and parking will certainly be front of mind. I will tell you, going into this particular layout, my expectation would be that the township we would recommend the township restrict parking. Because again, we're thinking of emergency vehicle access, but we're happy to reach out to the first responders, get their input as well. But that's our engineering team's recommendation.
On that parking requirement, because the car path width is not changing and currently parking is allowed. So the emergency responders would have the same access in the future as they currently do now. So I would look at some way to not fully restrict parking, or maybe restrict it on one side of the road.
I was gonna say on one side perhaps, and then non-trail side.
And then as far as the parking, I'm all for designing a larger parking area and building a smaller one. And then based on, as people use it, if it's always full, you can always add more. But if it's already built out and no one uses it, it might be built so much. So you can design for more and then be able to add it in the future if demand is there.
Understood.
There's a blind spot. If you're traveling up Willow Lane and making the bend to connect to Oak Grove, not at the bottom of the triangle, but at the top of the triangle, there's a house that sits at 517 Oak Grove. The gentleman who lives there has multiple dead vehicles parked in that driveway. Just last weekend, he pulled in a tractor trailer. But anyway, there's a blind spot that I foresee as being quite dangerous for people who are walking.
Thanks for flagging that. We had not identified that. We'll take a closer look in the field, and if we have any recommendations to help mitigate that, we'll incorporate that.
Any other feedback to the consultant from the board?
We do feel we had a lot of residents at the hearing to basically neighborhood meeting to share their views.
Yeah, we were very grateful for how many people came out to share their time and really talk to us in detail about the design. Thank you to everybody who came out tonight as well.
And was one of the concerns, I think you mentioned earlier that the residents had was they didn't want people coming in and parking on the street. So that would be another reason to restrict parking, but then we've also heard that no one's going to come and park. So that's part of what we're weighing is some folks think that everyone's going to park on the street and other folks think that you don't need to park.
I know that was one of the original things that I think we were talking about with that road. And when you go down that road, as I've gone on the road, you say, wow, it's pretty narrow. And people were worried that, well, if you do a trailhead here, they're going to park on the street.
Yeah, it's certainly a tough balancing act. So again, I think we'll take a look and see if there's anywhere where we can maintain parking on one side, and we'll see if it can be cost effective to do a stage construction because it's a small parking lot. It may not be cost effective to design the whole thing and build it in part, but we'll take a closer look and we can present the township with both options so that you guys can make an informed decision.
Why can't people park up at the other end and get on the trail instead of picking it up at the end of the road?
The goal is to continue the trail, so you would have even more folks
But
park.
I mean, to get the congestion, the safety and all that, why can't people park up where that roundabout is and just park and continue on their bike path up there instead of at our end and causing police issues? I think that's what our big concern is.
Well, thank you to everybody. Appreciate all of you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 6, old business. We have 6A, the Gish Furniture Revised Plan 2023-05 at 2205 Lincoln Highway East. Is anyone here from this plan? Good evening, Chris Benartic with RGS Associates. I'm joined by representatives of the application. For you, this may be familiar to you because back in we conditionally approved the land development plan. What I'd like to do tonight is just give you a very brief background on why we're here again for you. And you know, that's our project goal. Yeah, I mentioned back in June 24, the board needed to approve the land development plan. That was for a 120 room hotel that was positioned on the northern end of the site. About a 12,200 square foot retail building in the southeast end of the site there on the rendering. And then about a 15,000 square foot furniture for that southwest corner of the plan, with Route 30 being on the bottom. Since that time, in developing phase plan development, needs changed. So unfortunately, the plan to move forward with the hotel fell through. So we've revised the plan to respond to the market conditions, and that's why we're back here before you. So we took the plan, modified it. What you see before you now is the current plan that's gone through the review process again. And again, the planning commission in the plan recommends approval originally, but because of the changes, working with staff, going through the review, we're back before you to ask for meetings to be forwarded. We were with the planning commission 10th of this month. They did approve or recommend approval of the project. The plan now, as you see up there, the southwest corner is about a 530 square foot coffee shop. The retail building is now has changed from about 12,200 to about 7,800. And then the furniture store went from about 14,006 to about 22,620. We did have NPDS approval for the entire project, and we had contacted the business about the changes, put that plan back in for review. We received comments, and we've now resubmitted that back to the Conservation District to hopefully get that reapproved with the new entry. HOP plan, because the traffic is less intense than what the original plan was, it's been coordinated with PennDOT and the traffic impact study that we're not changing the driveway, entrance driveway off of Route 30 at all. It remains exactly what the plan. Short of once you're into the site, we've modified it for the new site layout. And then utilities, the same thing. This proposed use now is less intense than the original approved plan. So we're here before you seeking conditional approval again. We have the May 22nd DMA review letter. We have no objections to satisfying what's outlined in that letter. We had already addressed the county letter on the original review. I'm happy to walk you through. Other than that, happy to answer any questions you have.
Is the new store roughly where the hotel was?
Yes. Yeah, we've shifted it south a little bit, which then allowed us to move the stormwater management facility south as well. And really the reason for doing that is so we wouldn't have to disturb as much area. If you're familiar with the property, it does drop. So we'll debate some of that slope as much as we could, as we have the opportunity. In the previous plan, I think we discussed, or at least there was shown, maybe there wasn't shown, but a potential connection between that, your property and the Sonic property on the north side. Is that still considered or planned for at all? Or in the future? I know conversations with that property owner have not been successful in making an expansion there, but properties may change hands.
Yeah, so I know what you're referring to. So on the prior plan, you're right, we basically designed the parking lot so it could be easily extended to the side, the Sonic property. In our revised layout, we do that same things. Difficult to see on the. But right here, we show that stub of pavement where it could be extended in the future, and we stop the curb. That way you're not removing that curb in the future.
Okay, thank you. You're comfortable with David Miller letter?
Yeah.
From May 22nd?
Yeah.
And then how about the Route 30 streetscape improvement plans along the front of the property?
So we show on the plan that meandering white path, we work with staff to align that, and then the connection points to the existing edge of the property, the east and west end.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Have you received comments from the county plan?
Yes, those were received back in April of 23. There were 4 comments, which on our resubmission after we received those comments and the original township comments, we addressed those.
Any comments from staff?
No comments for you.
Did the planning commission have any additional recommendations?
Recommended based on the May 22nd, David Miller Associates letter. Reading any of the Lancaster County Planning Commission comments and continuing the improvements of the Route 32.
No more questions or comments. I'll entertain a motion.
Take a motion to approve the revised gift furniture plan number 023-05 at 2205 and 2217 Lincoln Highway East, based on the DMA letter of May 22nd, 2025, as well as any comments from the Lancaster County Planning Commission, understanding also the frontage improvements along Route 30 that they're in conformity with our streetscape.
Second. The motion by Mr. Thornton, the second by Mr. Rutt. Any for comments? Any public comment on this item? Question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Abstentions, motion passes. Thank you. Move on to item 7A, new business, Rockville parcel number 5, land development plan.
Good evening, I'm Claudia Shank with McNeese Wallace and Nurek, and I'm here this evening on behalf of Growmore Homes, the developer of this property. I'm joined this evening by Chris Nurek, who is our civil engineer with RGS, planning and design, who is our traffic consultant, and by Jeff. If you have a plan sent over earlier today that would show some streetscape improvements and path improvements, if we could maybe pull that one up. Yes, that's the one. Perfect. All right, so it's been a little while since we were before you on this project, so I just want to start out by kind of taking us up on where things are currently and then the items that we need your direction on this evening. So just to refresh the board's recollection, this project includes 2 separate land development plans. The land development plan for what is labeled as Unit K on your screen, what we have sometimes in the past referred to as Lot 2, has been approved. That contains 4 buildings with 32 units each, so it's a total of 128 units. We have this plan signed and ready to record, but we have been waiting to record the plan for a few months now because there are still some outstanding issues that relate to units L and M, lot 5, which is what we're here to discuss tonight, that could impact the overall viability of the project. So you may recall that we started demolition on one of the buildings on lot 2, unit K, made the decision to stop moving forward with that temporarily until we ensured that this project, lot 5, was viable and feasible to move forward. Part of the reason for that is the clubhouse that's going to serve all of these units is on lot 5. It's an important component of the project. So again, what we're talking about tonight is lot 5 or units L and M. These properties are all part of a condominium structure, which is why we have that labeling convention on the plan. This would involve, or this phase of the project involves 11 multifamily apartment buildings, 32 units each, so a total of 352 units. And we are before you this evening seeking action on our waiver requests and modification requests, as well as action on the plan. A few things to note as we start to talk about the waiver and modification requests. The first item I want to bring to your attention is public water and sewer. So we have, and I think the board is aware, there is a need for a significant sewer improvement to be able to serve this project, specifically to be able to serve lot 5 that we're talking about this evening. We are going to have to replace about 4,630 linear feet of pipe to the Mill Creek Intersector Station in order for this project to be accomplished. We have been in conversation with the sewer authority about that work. Most recently, we sent them a communication on April 15th of this year, suggesting that we would apply for grant funding to try to supplement the cost of performing that work, and asking that we could receive credits against the tapping fee for our costs that will be incurred in completing that work. We were informed by the authority board solicitor at the end of May that the authority is not willing to consider any credits against their tapping fee in order for the work that is going to be performed. So we will still seek grant funding to try to help with the cost of those improvements, but I bring that to your attention, even though it's not a matter for this board, but so that you understand that this had a significant financial implication. The list of waivers and modifications that I'm going to refer to this evening come from the February 21st, 2025 DMA letter. In that letter, DMA goes through each of the requested waivers and modifications and makes comments with respect to each. There are several items which I'll talk through that are part of a draft agreement that we provided to the township as a mechanism for dealing with some of the required improvements, particularly the pedestrian improvements that are needed for the site, as well as along Route 30. So we provided a draft of that agreement to staff in May, beginning of May. We received their comments last week. And so I want to try to provide the board with a picture of sort of where we're at in terms of those discussions with staff. I think there are a few items we'll need the board to weigh in on. Maybe it's easiest to start with the items where I think there's agreement. So if you look at waivers and modifications 1 through 5 in the DMA letter, I do not think at this point that there is any disagreement between staff and the developer with regard to those requests. Those relate to, waiver of preliminary plan scale, diameter for some conveyance piping, and some modifications and waivers related to pre-stage. But when we get to 6, 7, and 8, those are sort of the bigger ticket items related to path and streetscape improvements, as well as traffic impact study. Staff, I believe, is in agreement with granting a waiver or modification that no frontage improvements would be required on Hartman Bridge Road or Rockvale Road. And I think we're on the same page with respect to that. I also think that we are on the same page with regard to the park and rec fee. So we're proposing that would be calculated in the same manner as the fee was calculated for parcel 2. We would be taking the total acreage that's required for dedication and multiplying that against $50,000 per acre value to get the fee in lieu. The multimodal path that we're going to be constructing on the site, which is shown in blue on the exhibit, has been treated as a credit against that park and rec fee that we'll be paying. So for Unit K, we took a credit for the portion of the trail on Unit K that was part of the approval for that plan and part of that rec fee. And then for the remainder of the path, that would be a credit against the fee for Unit 5. I do think that there was an error in the credit cost opinion that we provided to the township where there was a double credit taken for that Unit K Lot 4. So we will correct that and ensure those numbers are reconciled. But in sum, I believe where we'll end up in terms of a park and rec fee for the project in total is around $440,000. So it would be $120,000 rec fee once the credits have been taken out for Lot 2 or Unit K, and then for Lot 5 would be a $320,000 rec fee approximately, so $440,000 in total. And we have agreed that we would install the portions of the pedestrian path that are shown in blue on the plan. These are part of the Rhinesville Master Plan. The places where I think we need direction from the board relate in particular to the improvements that are shown in pink along Lincoln Highway. Yeah. So if you're looking at that area, there is existing sidewalk along that section of Lincoln Highway today. It does not meet the township's desired specifications for the streetscape improvements, which specifically would include a 6-foot sidewalk that would be separated from Lincoln Highway by a 5-foot grass strip. That's the desired condition. There's also a proposal, or the township would like to see the developer move the curb in to actually narrow Route 30 Lincoln Highway in this location as a speed control measure. So we've taken a look at these improvements, and Chris can certainly speak more to them if there are specific questions, but they would come at a significant cost. Most costly would be relocating the curb line. There are a number of utility conflicts there that would have to be addressed. And this is particularly in light of the fact, again, that there is connectivity along that section of the highway now without the improvements. It's just not in this desired configuration. So what we had proposed to staff is we would undertake an application to try to secure grant funds for those improvements along Lincoln Highway, the streetscape improvements. We agreed that we would engage a consultant. We've been working with GMS Funding Solutions for 2 years from the recording of the plan to assist in seeking funding from DCED or PennDOT to cover the cost of those improvements. Our proposal is also that we would contribute up to the total value of that park and rec fee, the $440,000 toward the improvement. But our proposal was that that would be held in an escrow account and we could credit the cost of these improvements against that fee. And if there was any remaining at the end of the process, that would go to the township. If we don't get the money or the grant money, or there's only partial funding, again, our proposal was to complete whatever work could be completed on that streetscape improvement plan up to the cap of the $440,000 rec fee and not to be required to go beyond that. And then any remaining funds would go to the township. I know staff position is that the park and rec fee should go to trail improvements only, not to frontage improvements, if you will. I think that this is a unique situation because normally what we're talking about in terms of frontage improvements is installation of sidewalk and road widening. Here we're talking about narrowing the road and replacing an already existing sidewalk with a wider pedestrian path at a very significant cost. So for that reason, we believe that we should be able to receive a credit for the cost of that. There are 2 other items. I'll just go through them briefly and then we can kind of talk through them as needed. The current version of the plan, you will notice there are 2 gaps in the trail system. The first gap along the pink section of trail, right next to South Willowdale Drive, is Burger King's parcel. The other gap in the blue section of the trail is a hotel property. Neither of those properties are owned by the developer. We have in the past, at least with respect to the hotel property, talked about willingness to complete that work if the township secured the necessary easement. But I think given the reception, at least at the staff level, to the idea of us receiving any credit for the Lincoln Highway improvements, we're a little reluctant to commit to that now. And then the final item, which will require discussion, is the traffic study. Again, Jason Wheeler from TPD is here and can answer any questions the board has. We have proposed that we would pay a fee in lieu of traffic study. We have done the analysis, and this development is not going to generate additional traffic beyond what was contemplated when the Rockville Shopping Center was designed. And obviously, the idea of completing a traffic study, determining whether there's any required improvements, potentially having come back to this board and seek relief from them or deciding what needs to be done, that adds more time, cost, and uncertainty to the process, which is a concern for us, and one of the reasons that we think the fee would be. So those are really the issues that are before the board this evening that require your consideration, and we're certainly happy to answer any questions that you have to resolve those. And if I misstated anything, Tara and Ralph, please, by all means, correct me.
Questions from the board or comments from staff?
One for your chat. How many vehicles did you figure would be still within the apartment? In total? Once everything's built out.
Yeah. Indicated that the proposed redevelopment portion would be on a peak hour basis.
Total, just in total.
Total basis. Roughly 11,000 on an average weekday, which is 4,300 or so less than pre-existing.
Does that take into account, the retail operations with Rockville, where people are coming and going at different times potentially versus people maybe leaving at 7:30 in the morning at one time to get to work? Is that factored into your calculations?
Yes. So in the morning peak hour, when the existing retail stores aren't, at their peak time, the residential portion would have a comparable amount of traffic, or slightly more. Specifically exiting, because they're trying to work wherever. But on the PM side and on the Saturday peak times, the residential is significantly lower than the retail portions.
Thank you.
Do you have a status update on where you're at with your plan?
Yeah, so where we're at is just where I described. I think we've recently been told by the sewer authority that if we want to make the connection, it's going to be at our expense without any credits. And that's the assumption that we're operating under at this point in time.
Any update on the grant application
No.
process?
Right, so if we receive approval for the plan, we would then move forward and the project's still viable. We would then move forward with the grant process. We expect to do that for about 2 years. We've talked to the consultant. There's a number of options. None obviously are a sure thing, but we would move forward with that and try to, there's a cost to engage the consultant. So we just want to make sure first that we have a project.
So it hasn't been engaged yet. You've been looking at it. You have a consultant.
We have a consultant. I think we're waiting to sign on the dotted line until we know that we can make the numbers work for the project as a whole.
If you did a fee in lieu of a traffic study and then we did the traffic study, and the traffic study indicated that we needed to make either turning lane improvements or signalized intersection improvements, how would we address those with you?
I think our assumption is that the township would likely use the fee for some other purpose. I think given, to study some other traffic improvement that's needed, I think given where things stand currently and what the data shows, there really isn't a need to restudy this corridor. And that was why we envisioned it as a fee in lieu, not so that the township would do our work, but so that it could be used somewhere where it's more beneficial.
So my understanding from talking with township staff is we don't know what the traffic study would show. Therefore, we would like to have the traffic study to figure that out. And if you're right and we don't need to do anything, then we can just keep moving forward. But if something does turn up, we would like to know that prior to the project starting. Is that an accurate description, staff?
I think one of the points of contention that we have is that the traffic study might show items or improvements necessary that are contradictory to what you envision on your streetscape plan, right? Like you're trying not to widen Route 30 at all. The corridor that we would be looking at is right within the streetscape plan. So providing a traffic study that says, hey, you need to widen Route 30. And then you say, well, we're not going to do that. So we don't want to do that. It's not a whole lot of benefit to them. And there's already signal timing upgrades and signal upgrades happening over that corridor as well currently through the PennDOT process. So we're not sure any retiming or anything is going to be addressed as part of those projects.
Earlier, you stated that during an answer to Mr. Gallagher's question, peak time for morning exit when currently the retail shops are closed would be higher than the peak during when the retail shops are operating. So that may indicate, what does that have to do with the stacking for left and right turns out of the parcel, both onto Lincoln Highway or onto Rockville Road, or potential stacking from Rockville Road onto 896. Those are questions I don't know, but based off of what you said, that would indicate where it wouldn't necessarily indicate widening Route 30. I think that's a bit of a red herring, but we can look at what are the internal changes, how much stacking for exiting traffic at 7:30 in the morning do we need? I think those are important questions that we would like to see addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I think for clarification, in the morning peak, we're only, you're within like 40 total trips of the, comparing the pre-existing to the proposed. So it's very minimal, within 10%.
I think the bottom line is this Rockville was designed for a much higher traffic volume than what we're proposing with this redevelopment. And redevelopment is expensive. And part of doing a redevelopment project is assuming you're not going to have some of those ground up costs that you might have if you had a raw piece of ground. And this is one of those costs.
What would the cost of a traffic study be?
$20,000, that's what we're suggesting. And it's the uncertainty. I mean, really more than the cost, it's the uncertainty. What might be found, what township want as a result of it? How long might it take us to negotiate what that looks like? And now we've added 6 months, 8 months to a project that has already been delayed significantly.
Because we didn't want to do a traffic study. So some of these have been known things that we've been trying to work through that have been holding things up. And we would also like to see a removal of some of the uncertainty. So that's sort of my thoughts is if you're wanting us to take the fee, we would want to do the traffic study. You still have all the same uncertainty.
I think the traffic study, I mean, I would disagree slightly. I don't think it's because we've been holding off or refusing to do it. This only came up towards the end of the process. It was previously our understanding that it wouldn't be required. And then we even received a letter from DMA that said they were recommending a waiver of it. And another letter subsequent to that from your traffic consultant saying, no, in fact, we want you to do it. So there have been mixed signals on this point.
I think it's worth pointing to make too, and Chris was already asking, when we started with the project, obviously the first place we look is the ordinance, right? Those are the rules that we hold, I refer to in doing the plan. And in the subdivision land development, it does have section 516 about criteria.
If I could just stop you, Chris, I don't think it's beneficial to argue the language of the ordinance about whether or not you should be required to do the traffic study at this point. I think right now is, do we want you to do the traffic study or not? Are we going to waive that? I think it's already in here as a requirement, so I don't know if that's gonna be beneficial. Unless anyone else would like to hear the detail of the language of the ordinance.
I think I was just simply explaining how we got to it. And it's referring to it.
It might be beneficial to start with where we are now and look at what things we need to do. Proposing a traffic fee to cover the cost of what would be a traffic study instead of doing the traffic study and potentially finding out something that you don't want to do or we wouldn't want to do. So that item there. The other item seems to be what we have a Parks and Recreation fee that then you want to apply to potentially doing other work that we're requiring on what we require on the site. So you'd ask for a waiver of the frontage improvements, and DMA's letter or engineer's letter is looking for a deferral of that. So instead of the deferral, you're looking for applying the Parks and Recreation fee towards that amount, at that amount. So essentially double counting the Parks and Rec fee.
Well, I wouldn't describe it as double counting, but that is what we are suggesting. Yeah, that the park and rec fee could be credited towards the Lincoln Highway streetscape improvement.
And again, for context, the Parks and Recreation fee typically is used for, you're adding a bunch of residential units, that's going to add increased usage of our parks, and therefore we want to add improvements or add more parks so that more folks can use our parks and trails that we have throughout the township.
That's correct. I think our position is the improvements that are happening on Lincoln Highway are being done for pedestrians, bicyclists, they're recreational improvements. They're not, there's no sidewalk there now and we need sidewalks. So I think this is a little different than, again, a all ground development where there's nothing along the frontage and we're saying that we think we should apply this fee towards that. That's the distinction I would make.
And we've got the trail connection between Unit K and the trail. So
yeah,
the giant chunk of missing trail there.
I don't want to speak for Jeff, and he certainly can chime in. I think if we can reach agreement on some of these issues, we would be willing perhaps to say, yes, if the township gets the easements for that, we'll build it. But I think we are in a position where we feel like we're just agreeing to things and not getting any concessions back in return, and it is affecting the viability of the project.
I'm sorry, I can add, because
Yeah,
I said, this issue, because of the timing and the bonding, this will end up, your staff will want to bond. Well, you don't even, you have a right to do that. It'll end up on my bond, and I can't, I don't know how to do that. So it should be bonded. The area of the, anything that's not my property that I don't control, the township will control, I shouldn't be bonded up front with you filing the thing for something that might not ever happen. So, but the plan takes it by the plan, by the bond. And then stop. I can't go to the bond. So there has to be, yeah, that's why I was thinking, if we give you a fee, why doesn't the township do their own? And it's not my bond. I think I might have, that piece ended up in the bond calculations, I believe, the parcel too. But I'm not sure. That piece of hotel property. Either way, it's on the plan, it's not being bought.
I don't believe the hotel property was part of parcel 2.
And it wouldn't be bonded, well, whatever, the already happens here, at least it should be bonded, it's my property. I don't control whether it happens or not.
It's work you would be performing. I mean, we're looking to do a sewer connection and upgrade, which again is required. property you also don't own. Sewer connection to the property?
There's no easement here. Yeah, the township would have
If
to.
we were to secure an easement, which is something that I know we've been working on. Similar, we're working on easements all up westward of you on Lincoln. I would do the same thing of bumping out, expanding the sidewalks and bumping out those curves. So our goal is we would like to continue that along that whole frontage and make those connections with the trail.
And again, I don't know that we are opposed to working with the township on ensuring that there's full connectivity, but what is basically being requested now is for us to bear the entire cost of the blue pathway, which is the full access pedestrian movement throughout the site, the, streetscape improvements along the entire front part of the property, which again are designed for pedestrian connectivity. You're going to have 2 trails through this property, and really, the cost of that is prohibitive.
And those are all ones we're giving credit for against that.
The blue is, there is credit, it's the pink, and I don't know if Chris can talk to the cost to do that. And I know there was a concern about utility relocation and conflicts. I mean, it seems like a simple thing, frankly, to a layperson to me, but I understand that it's actually very complicated if it was being suggested. So I don't know if you can speak to that in more detail.
Yeah, we did it. We had, at the request of the township, we started with a concept plan, and then we actually hired a surveyor to survey that border along the entire front of the property to identify any potential conflicts, utilities, and so forth. So there are a number of poles out along there that are in the path of the way. Lots of underground utilities, I think most of which we can, honor and not have to disturb those. But, there's traffic cabinets out there. Let's see if we can somehow weave around those, but it's a significant undertaking, and that's not even counting the relocation.
Or the PennDOT effort for relocating. Do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, an HOP through PennDOT for all the PennDOT way. But yeah, we obviously activating, removing that entire area that's shown in the pink where it's curved, and then moving it out 2 feet and reconstructing that curve. So you're getting into storm drainage and so forth.
And again, I think there's a willingness to work with the township to accomplish the goals that the township has here, but the reality of the project can only bear so much cost before it just doesn't move forward.
Any additional questions from the board?
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So with respect to your effort, proposal that you want to make sure that the project will work without the grant funding, and then apply for the grant funding, and the grant funding is then better term gravy for the project.
Well, I think the concern is we have to be prepared for what happens if we don't get it. If we don't receive that funding, can we move forward? And that's a very real possibility. So, if we receive full funding through the grant to be able to do this work without any match, we'll do it without any match, and the township will keep the park and rec fee, and everyone will go their way, but what happens if that doesn't come through? So I think less gravy and more about knowing what our maximum spend is going to be, and not having some unknown, expenses out there.
Certainly about the connection fee about the sewer. Up till a month ago, sewer authority had agreed that they wouldn't get well, we're interested in giving us the connection fee. There's 2 pieces of connection fee, the transmission and the treatment. Yeah, they're not. The conveyance was a given that they were gonna allow us to do that. We had back and forth. That was we were discussing that, and then we expected that to come back. No, they came back now with no on any, not even the conveyance, which is what we're providing the conveyance. they won't allow them, that's tough, you know. Hopefully. Yeah, so we lost that battle too. So just yeah, notify, yeah. Yeah, they will give us the credit because the conveyance piece of it either. So it's just becoming, it's getting worse and worse.
All right, so we've got a few items that are going to require decision or feedback to the applicant. It's either if we can grant everything or deny everything, or say, here's the part we'd like to go back and tweak. What's our timeline on this application, Tara?
You did grant the application a time extension until August 19th.
We can give them feedback tonight and they can come back, look at stuff before August 19th.
We have 3 meetings, the 14th of July, the 4th of August, and the 18th of August.
So your preference, Jen, do we want to give guidance to direct them, or are you ready to take action on the plan tonight?
Well, I would say, you know, I know it's very complex, but I'm kind of disappointed that the grant process hasn't been engaged in yet. It seems like that's an expensive piece. We know that's an expensive piece, but, you know, I think it was quite some time ago that we were talking about, hey, we have to at least do everything we can to push that information to you and make that happen. Because it's such a large ticket, I don't know why it wouldn't go right away.
Couple reasons. I think first of all, this developer has never worked with grants before. It's not how they do business, but given the desire of the township that they pursue it, they're going to do that. But again, it's expensive. Right now, we don't know if this project is going to work or not. And so we don't pay a consultant to go out and apply for grant funding when we don't know whether we can build a project.
How about feedback? Let's just take a couple of these items. Traffic study. The board think traffic study is, we want them to do the traffic study, or we're gonna waive the traffic study? I'm of the opinion of either we do a traffic study or we don't. I'm really concerned about the fee part, but that's my thought.
Based on the consultant's feedback, I mean, I would have to trust what you're telling us. And if you're telling us it's not gonna change traffic, then I would have to believe that you know what you're doing. Oh, yeah. At the same time, I drive that road a lot, pretty dirty, and it does get pretty congested there, so I can see what Demi had stated about people exiting the facility in the mornings could be more of a problem than, you know, turning back into the facility in the evening.
Like I don't know about, I mean, I travel it all the time. I live very close. And I know there's great concern about it. There's from the citizens, there's a great concern. Feel much better if one was done. The requirement.
Thoughts on the traffic project?
In my mind, between taking the consultant's view and as a representative of the citizens of East Lampeter Township, being prudent and asking for a traffic study.
Some feedback on the traffic study piece. How about the deferral or waiver or reapplying our fee from the parkland fee and targeting it towards that area.
If the grant funding doesn't cover it.
If the grant funding doesn't cover it.
I would be on board with that. I would hate to see the project killed with all this effort that went into it and to have a vacant blighted property for the next 4 years there.
So you'd be okay using the fee in lieu of
Basically targeting that, towards that, basically capping it at that piece, and then anything beyond that, we'd be on the hook for.
I'd be okay with that.
Me, really understanding what traffic issues we're going to have, I'd be okay with the proposal for the Park and Rec as they have proposed it.
With that too.
So I think the board seems to be, consensus is fine with the applicant's proposal of taking 2 years to apply for grants, as well as then the board would say, if the grants don't come through, we're willing to target that fee in lieu of parkland directly towards that streetscape project. Now, is that something that we're allowed to do with our fee in lieu of parkland? To target it, to spend that money in.
For frontage improvements.
I think the only person that can object to the way you spend it is the applicant. So we have the ability, if you misspend the park and rec money, we have the ability to object to that. But if we waive that ability, I think you can use it however you like.
I think future folks could also object or use that to object.
Not legally, that I'm aware of, but I mean, we do this in other municipalities. There are quite a few municipalities that will say, if we'll agree that your park and rec fee can be reduced by 20% if you let us put it in our general fund. That is not.
Like to have an opinion on it.
Yeah. We want to double check that. We've had some issues there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have something you wanted to add there?
No, park and rec fees for East Lampeter have always been used for acquisition and maintenance of parks. Not for frontage improvements, just that's been our policy.
Not necessarily maintenance, but improvements.
Those are those two items. And then the connection of the path through the hotel property. We need an easement from staff, or staff was working on getting an easement. Would it be possible to put a time frame on securing that easement if the applicant was willing to develop it? Because if you develop the path, then you get credit for it. Figure out how much that was and add that to the fee.
And I just want to make sure we're not missing two.
I just want to have some sort of time frame on it, so it's not sitting forever.
We had proposed 2 years. I think staff had suggested 3. We're much more comfortable with 2. And then the other piece of that is the Burger King, which is the gap in pink as well. So you have the hotel and the Burger King, and we need to think about how both of those situations are going to be.
Did you offer 2 years for both of those, or was just 2 years for the hotel?
It was just 2 years for the hotel. We hadn't previously discussed the Burger King.
Actually, just aside, the Burger King property is not part of this plan. I'm not sure why discussion is part of this plan. But it became part of this application. It's not on the whole thing from so initially discussed, this will be, if we come for an approval for that area, we'll discuss at that time, that area. Somehow things got to do with the development.
My understanding is we're looking at the whole Rockville redevelopment is what we're looking at and trying to make sure there's connectivity through it.
And I think from our perspective, again, we're willing to work to make sure that occurs, but then there have to be some concessions for us from the township. So you know, I don't know, Jeff, how you feel if they agree that the park fee, we can, you know, credit these improvements against the park fee. I don't know how you feel in that circumstance about doing these trail extensions if you get a credit for them.
Again, the issue, the timeline. We don't want to be stuck here forever. Again, we'll end up bonding it. That's what the staff will do. And then we're waiting for your easement situation. So we propose, we can't get it in 2 years, you probably won't get the 30. You work on it now. If they're willing to do it, then they'll.
And this timeframe, when would the clock start ticking?
So 2 years for the hotel and Burger King.
Yes.
Accept.
Yeah, I think if the board is, as you've indicated, if you're willing to agree to using that fee for the frontage improvements, I think yes.
You don't take that, obviously, we'll get the credit. It didn't happen. You just look at the credit, town will do it. They get these 5, 10 years for this. Just don't get locked into something that can.
Do something that.
Just with respect to easements, the board has the ability to condemn. At any time.
So 2 years should be okay then.
The agreement language complicates that time frame. Don't have that proposed agreement in front of me, so I can't clarify for you, but it does complicate it. And just to be clear, what was also in the proposed agreement was that if the amount of the park and rec fee is not enough to pay for all of the frontage improvements, then they would get done by the applicant.
Right. And we would probably need to, create a summary to make sure we're all on the same page and addresses the items. Probably need to come back to other meetings to put a pin in it, because we'll need an agreement that we'll have to review.
We'd like to know the complication.
Yeah, so if there's complications with the agreement, those need to be hammered out, but if staff has direction from us of what our parameters are, I think that would help them, and then meeting with the applicant, and they can try to reach an agreement on those pieces. So what I'm hearing, from the board, I'll try to summarize, is, the board is comfortable with the fee in lieu of parkland amounts being credited towards the frontage improvements along Lincoln Highway. We're comfortable with waiving the traffic study. And then we are giving the applicant 2 years to work to secure grant funding for those frontage trail improvements, conditioned on the township staff securing easements from the property owners to complete those, from starting at the recording of the plan and continuing for 2 years.
What you said about the traffic study, but it wasn't what I heard from the board. You said comfortable waiving.
We're a little split on that. That's going to be, there's 2 maybes and there was 3. One pretty strong. He's a strong maybe. He seems to be in favor. He seems to be fine waiving it.
Okay.
I'm gonna go where I think it goes. If I'm the swing, then I'll probably waive it.
Okay. Okay, I think that gives us what we need to go back and finalize the agreement. Ralph and Tara, do you agree, or are there any things that?
Or board, did I summarize that correctly? I don't want to speak for everyone.
I feel like we should come to a decision on the traffic.
You want to take an informal vote on the traffic board? You can just say your opinion on, if you want to waive the traffic study.
I don't want to waive the traffic study.
I'll waive. I'm waiving. I'll waive you waiving. I'm comfortable waiving the traffic study.
I think it was leave the traffic study. I've sat here, everybody's had a traffic study every way. And you're just gonna let her come up and say, oh, my name is Nick Wagner, by the way, for $20,000 just to uncover something that you don't want to hear about that could be more expensive. In October, you give almost $250,000 in relief to this project. They came in asking for a certain number, they've gotten more. Now all of a sudden, we're out of money, we can't make any. So I've had to do a traffic study for my stuff, and it's very small. Everything we decided to do it. I sat here, every developer has to put in sidewalks, has to do this and that. And she says, oh, we can't do this project for $20,000, we don't want to find the cat. I'm shaking my head. Or I'm shaking my head.
I read it down the street from there.
I sat here, all this.
Hold on.
You're sitting here, you're saying.
Sir, if we can have some, we will have some public comment, and we'll have the opportunity, and we'll make sure
You
you
can
stay
put on the spot right here.
Yeah, so,
You're about to pass a motion, so felt it was.
yeah, so we'll give an opportunity for the public to make a statement. But right now you're talking over each other. We want to make sure that we hear both of you. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll let you state your
Yeah,
name.
neighbors have sat here, we just Nick Wagner, they said they were worried about the traffic in and out. You're trying to say that it's the same, but it's not. There's residential buildings there. It's not the same. This isn't shopping. It's a completely different type of traffic. I heard you say it with your own mouth just now. Like, I don't know how this is gonna change it. And then for what I would say is a nominal fee on a $120 million project, we just don't want to find out what's wrong. That seems underhanded, one hand washing the other, and I can't just sit here quietly and listen to it. I thought you were on the right track, Mr. Demi. I was actually sitting here proud that someone would think of the citizens of the township here, but yeah, that's my piece. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interject there. Sorry.
I'm just in agreement with him. I'm shocked that we want to waive a traffic study. It just doesn't make much sense to me.
And your name for the record, please?
Suzanne.
Suzanne.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Gene Schuman, the traffic study that was conducted by an independent.
If you do a traffic study, it's a traffic analysis.
Traffic analysis that is contracted by the developer.
And they're just gonna trust that they know what they're doing with what looks at there. If I may help you.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, this is, as an East Lampere resident, we want you to do studies on our behalf. This man is a worker of this man. Can we truly trust his analysis? I mean, I hate to make that judgment, but you even mentioned it, can I assume you're telling the truth? I mean, that's an assumption. I would say do your own analysis for the citizens of this area.
Yeah.
That's what.
Any other public comment on this item?
Just on should be there's a reason, there's a procedure, a process. I know there's been back and forth. I haven't been to every single meeting, however, like you guys are taking this board as trying to create a bunch of hurdles when I've seen them almost bend over backwards in order to get this done and even try and get more units. As a business, did you not have a certain amount of units and they granted 25% more? Business.
We'll take it back. We'll get back to the month.
And maybe that we can come into some of the streetscape.
You forced it, we got forced, but you wanna, if you approve a master plan, you need to enforce the record.
It's just business, I'm just, this is business.
We were not interested, so, just saying, we're not interested in more in the density. That was a request of the town to add more units here. Because this is where redevelopment happens. That was the town, that wasn't us, that's all I'm saying.
I think what I would suggest that we do is come back to a subsequent meeting with an agreement that has been ironed out, given the discussion this evening with staff and the township solicitor. But we will ensure that that is done within the next couple meetings.
We appreciate that.
Is that clear to the board? Staff, any questions? Okay. We look forward to continuing the conversation. All right, moving on to item 7B, Stoltzfus Woodworking Land Development Plan 2025-03, 325 Willow Road. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. King Pigney. I'm with Commonwealth Engineers. We prepared a land development plan for 324 Willow Road. A little bit of history. He recently, our applicant, add-on plan that happened, I think, approximately 2 to 3 years ago. He proceeded to perform some site grading on that add-on piece of ground. The township issued a cease and desist letter, and we talked to the township, and it was required that a development plan be prepared to handle this site disturbance the township discovered. We prepared that land development plan. I believe we submitted it in January. We got from EMA Associates, and we prepared revisions to that review letter. We have the latest review letter from DMA Associates. This is on 3rd, 2025. We also received a letter from the Lancaster County Planning Commission. That's dated 6/4/2025. There was really one comment on there that had to do with updating the approval blocks, some text items. The review letter is fairly innocuous. It's a lot of housekeeping issues. We have no problem addressing all of the items on that review letter. We appeared in front of the Planning Commission last week, and the Planning Commission recommended approval. Both review letters, the DMA, as well as the Lancaster County Planning Commission letter. There was also one additional item. I believe the Tara Commission recommended that we move the product or that he's placing out in front of this property area to the rear of the property area, so we can tidy up that. So that's I guess the intent of this land development plan is that we've expanded parking. Item number 1. Item number 2, he has a outside storage area that's behind the building, and that is for raw lumber. And then inside the building will be the manufacturing of these sheds and accessory structures. And then the storage area in the rear of the property is going to be where the finished structures are going to be stored temporarily until they're trucked off site to people who purchase these structures. I'm here to answer any questions you might have, but I'm also respectfully asking, given the small items on the review letter that we can handle administratively. Items of both review letters as well as the additional item and to their approval recommendation.
And that was mainly that all structures be on impervious.
Thank you. Yes, and in addition to that, the structures that are being currently stored at the site are going to be stored on impervious surface. So we don't have additional impervious surface by the structure itself sitting on grass.
And you and the business owner recognize that to get more impervious, you'd have to come back.
Correct.
You've got a lot of buildings out there.
From what I hear, yeah.
Have you been out to the property?
I have not personally been out to the property. I have seen similar properties, and I have seen similar amounts of sheds that tend to wind up everywhere. And this is somewhat typical of some of our clients.
Yeah. Thanks for your honesty.
Mr. Hagee noted this went through a subdivision process. You have a deferral for frontage improvements for this property from that subdivision process.
If I may add, that subdivision was prepared by another engineering firm. So we had prepared a land development plan in 2014 for the smaller parcel. Another engineering firm prepared the long plan with the King Farm, like an additional 1/10 of an acre or 6/10 of an acre. And now the property is just a little bit over 2 acres in size. But we have that recorded plan on our file, but we don't have, I don't have a full understanding of that plan because we did not prepare it.
And this would address the current 2,700 square foot building that was built out back or covered area.
Yeah, it's like a lean-to.
It's a 2550, I think, square foot. It's an open storage area. It's just so any lumber that he has on site is sort of tucked away and not getting rained on.
Mr. Rudd stepped out for a minute, so I'll wait for him to return. Any other questions for the applicant?
I mean, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Suggest that the board consider having some amount of frontage improvements completed, especially at the driveway. I've concerned the driveway because of the ins and outs of roads and such will grow over time unless it is curbed. Unintended growth.
So when frontage improvements, was that just curbing that we waived or deferred? Was that way curbing it? The curbing and sidewalks or just?
Planning Commission talk about those deferrals at all? I can't recall.
That's looking at.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The impervious area that was there is now 5-6 feet wider with the addition of gravel has fallen off of a truck and probably ended up beside the driveway. It appears. But I think the concern is that that will continue to happen and that will become a month. The frontage, the driveway will just be the entire front of the property. Or it's wider than it was and it appears to be growing. So what are your board's thoughts on requiring a partial requirement of or calling of the deferral asked?
Yeah.
So we could just require as part of this, we're calling deferral on the curbing, I would say starting from the eastern side of the property. The front driveway. I don't know how far back in you want to go. Or we'd have to go wherever the easement, township easement is.
We're talking about curbing and just curbing.
We want to do the radius return.
Yes, we'd want to cut in the sidewalk. Is that by radius return, you meaning the cut in for that, so someone could walk up onto the grass from there.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, around the actual curve of the driveway.
Yes. Okay, so radius turn, mean basically from the road all the way back to where it stops turning. That's the radius return.
You could put in the cut for the future sidewalk at a crossing where someone would cross the driveway. If you wanted to prepare for that future sidewalk. If not, when sidewalk would go in, it would have to be cut out at that point in time to have an appropriate ADA accommodation.
You enter the property here.
Is the owner here tonight, unfortunately?
What was this deferral? What was this?
I believe it was 2013.
So that was the original plan development plan.
Okay.
You know what? I'm sorry, 2017.
Is that when they did the lot add-on?
No, that was, he came in,
For the initial plan development plan, I believe 16, 27.
That wasn't you.
but that deferral continued.
17.
That deferral continued with the 2023 lot add-on plan with Mr. King next door.
That plan was not.
So for the board, would you like to require the curbing with this or keep it deferred? We can call it.
You can call deferral at any time, right?
But we want to call a section of the deferral. Let's see, how concerned are we with that driveway continuing to get wider? Trucks will just go up on the curb now. But it's a pretty wide driveway there, right?
I'm sure opinion about calling deferral now.
Yeah, I don't either.
Say again.
I do not have a strong opinion about calling the deferral now. We can call deferral at any time.
Mike and Roger, thoughts?
But the deferral continue.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve Solstice Woodworking Land Development Plan 324 Willow Road. Conditioned on the May 23rd, 2025 review letter from David Miller Associates. The June 4th review letter from Lancaster County Planning Commission. And then all of them which will be placed on service.
Second. All right, motion and a second. Is there any board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you, sir. All right, next we have item 7C, Eagle Excavating Request for Waiver of Land Development, 709 Hartman Station Road. We're here for this project. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Steve Hackett, with Site Design Concepts, representing Iron Eagle Excavating. Sorry, there's a typo on the agenda there. It's Iron Eagle, and Raylan Weaver here. So the property in question is the old H.L. Whiteker property. The applicant is proposing adding an additional office user to the parcel. The intention is that Iron Excavating move their office to the private building on site, the largest in buildings. It's already renovated for the office space sitting in the lower left plan, which constitutes a lane. So we are here to request a waiver. And as a part of this, any questions?
Any questions from the board? Comments from staff?
Sufficient parking for the uses. The use was already used as an office just by.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Iron Eagle excavating request for land, for waiver of land development at 709, 711 Hartman Station Road.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Thornton, second by Mr. Gallagher. Any board discussion, comments? Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those for abstention? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 7D, Devon Creek informal discussion. Busy tonight, Chris.
And yes, tonight, we're just informal discussions. We didn't vote the members object, the whole throw some background on the concept we're looking at, and why. What is the modifications that would be necessary to implement the plan? Feedback on architecture, and then next step. So the project, like you recall, is about 50 acres. It is on the south side of Route 3, as shown up on the screen there. That is the original, what I'll call, approved plan, where we had a conditional use and then went to the preliminary plan, and then phase 1 and phase 2. The reason why we're here is looking ahead to phases 3 and 4. So from a simple standpoint of orienting with the plan, phases 1 and 2 are on the west side of the stream. The stream is that north-south green corridor you see there in the center of the plan. And then on the east side of that stream is phases 3 and 4. So in phase 1 is, I believe, which is now phase 2 is well under construction. And the goal was phases 3. Right off the main entrance there is shown in phases 3 and 4. We have all conversations about water supply to the project. So there was a water vault that was necessary to originally had planned a stormwater management facility. That's because it's at the low end of the site right before 23. That stormwater management facility is no longer can fit in that area since we have a vault there. And I'll point out, we started the project, I think, in 2005. So we're in 2025, 20 years later, lots has changed. A lot has changed with the market, a lot has changed with buyers and what they want, and a lot has changed with design and approval of the EPD. So as we fast forward to today and look at, okay, what does it take to implement phases 3 and 4, we quickly learned that stormwater management needs to be reviewed, reassessed, and see how we can accomplish it, as well as shifting things around by now. If we could maybe jump to the next plan. So that's essentially the same view, but now it's fast forwarding today. We've had multiple meetings with township staff, talking about how we can advance the plan. The original plan approval that we had up previously had a grand total of 399 units. The plan that you see now, that's the concept that we've kind of evolved with the township staff, also has 399 units, so we're not really still contains a mix of multifamily units, duplex, duplex is in phase 3 and 4 because we reduced the quantity. Yeah, so duplex is in phases 3 and 4. Originally it was 22, that's now 0, such on that unit mix, but we have multifamily duplexes, townhouses, and single family as part of the overall project. When we looked at modifying the plan, we looked at changing that unit mix. So the unit mix in phases 3 and 4 now, it went from originally 89 single family to now shown at 100. Duplexes went from 22 to 0, townhouses from 25 to 10, multifamily from 120 to 137. So again, full build of 399 units. The reason for that change is, again, we've kind of shuffled around the unit type, much like actually we did back in phase 2 years ago. We looked at changing from duplexes in towns based on what product was attractive to the market. So what we're finding is the buyers say they're looking for more square footage in their home, but on a smaller lot. So that's how we kind of fast forward to where we're at right now. To implement, we need some modifications from the original approved plan. Some of those modifications are why we're here tonight, to get your feedback just in general in how we would move forward prior to doing any engineering on the plan. One is side yards. The original approval had side yards of 6 feet, and we were looking at doing side yards of 5 feet. A question that came up from the planning commission was that one thing there are sections in the ordinance that do allow for 5-foot side yards. 5-foot side yards have been used in other projects, so it's something that, is not. But again, that's in response to try to maximize the space available for the unit for the yard. So I'll point out the perimeter of the plan that you see there. We have what we call the estate lots. Those are the larger single family, just like the original plan. 52-foot wide lots around the outside, and then the other single family product is what's shown there in yellow. Again, same as what you had in the original plan approval, which was the alley. So you have the rear garage serviced by an alley. The called magenta color there, it is townhouses in that cluster, and then the purple area up front is the multifamily. And you'll see we kind of rendered an area of multifamily in phase 2, because as we were looking at modifying what we're doing with the multifamily in phase 3 and 4, we also think this is plan 3 is in phase 2. So, we haven't gotten that far into architecture. We're trying to work that into the plan moving forward. One of the other things I want to point out that we just talked about with the planning commission, you'll see a red oval there on the plan. As we step back and look at this plan, we realized there were 5 points of vehicular connection into just phases 3 and 4 alone. 3 of those were crossing that stream that goes to the north and south. So we simply presented to the staff the idea of, well, what if we, instead of crossing that, having 3 crossing across the stream, maybe we just do 2. So what that's showing is you wouldn't end in a dead end street. You would have a private street that would have an easement over it. So it would be maintained by the community, not the township, but would allow emergency services to continue that path down without coming to a dead end. And what that simply does is essentially you're just taking that would have otherwise crossed the stream, you're rotating that to the south 90 degrees and coming down the road there. Now, I will say feedback we got from the Township Planning Commission was, what does that do to traffic? How does that redistribute traffic? And then we said that's something we can certainly look at. The belief is that people are going to gravitate and go north to get onto Route 30 as quickly as possible. There was a question saying, hey, let's look at it and make sure we don't have traffic going out Hornick and then up to 23 and overloading that intersection. So I think that was good feedback from the Planning Commission. I just wanted to point that out, because that is one thing that's different from the original plan. Some other things that were the rear setbacks as well. Originally, there was a 35-foot perimeter setback. We were looking at doing to the building 15 feet, and then in some cases you'd have patios at 10. And we would introduce privacy fencing and landscaping to try to mitigate that. And again, we're really just trying to utilize the available space for those units. Garages, Ryan is here from Keystone to talk specifically about architecture and what the buyer is looking for there. We're looking at aligning the garage face to the face of the building itself. We go across the front of the building. There is a plan that we can show that shows some of those units. And then with regard to the multifamily, originally in the ordinance, it had a maximum of 12 units per building, I believe it was. So we're proposing to have like 28 that we have from now, 28 units per apartment building. And some feedback from the planning commission was, would you consider the building to a 4th story instead of 3, adding even more units? So again, that's why we're here tonight, is to get that feedback to see, does it make sense to maybe consider a 4th story? Does it make sense to maybe combine buildings? That was one thing that came back to with the feedback from the township staff or the planning commission about where do we fall with open space. This plan that you're looking at is about the same in terms of open space, what we had on the prior approval compared to what we have now. In the end, you'd end up with about 5.5 acres of open space, and that open space will include those stormwater areas too, and you can provide calculations and back out those stormwater bases just like we did before. But one of the things that was thrown out from the planning commission was, well, if you potentially combine the multifamily buildings instead of having, say, 2 or 3, maybe you go 1 or 2, again, consider going up. So I think something that would certainly wants to consider and want to get the board input on that. Another item that we would need for a modification is unit mix. In the original ODI ordinance that said you cannot have less than a 10% unit mix or more than a 40%, and that's a specific type, being either a duplex, townhouse, multifamily. In the case where we have this drawn now, we're at about 6% for duplexes, and that would be when you're looking across the entire full build, and then 52% multifamily. Another point of discussion that came up was impervious coverage. So like on the original approval, there was a notation that talked about some units exceeded the impervious cover, like say on a townhouse, it might be limited to 70%. Some townhouse lots exceeded that 70%. We recognize we're answering to the conservation district, DEP, on how we do stormwater. We recognize we have to manage that before it leaves the property. So everything's collected and conveyed before it crosses 23 leaves the property. We're meeting the requirements of DEP and the conservation district with the NPDES permit and rate and volume and so forth. Since time has gone by, getting infiltration testing on the site, there's virtually no infiltration out there. So we're into the MRC, you're familiar with that, and managed release concept. And that's where we have that green patch there, basins just on the east side of the stream. And we'll also have supplemental below grade stormwater management facilities, as did the original plan. But all in all, make sure that when we're looking at impervious, again, with dialogue with the township, assigning what those impervious maxes are for each type of unit. But obviously at the very end, we're going to make sure that we're not exceeding the rate of volume when it leaves the property. That's kind of a quick overview of modifications in architecture, just to touch on where we would go from here. We talked about if we can work out what makes sense on how to implement the plan, we would probably be going through a text amendment. We'd be going back to the conditional use, you can see it there. And then ultimately coming forward with another land development plan for phases 3 and 4. So we have a lot of work to do ahead of us. I think maybe at this point, Ryan will talk about architecture.
Ryan Brubaker, the Director of Architecture with Keystone Custom. Thanks, Chris. It's a great recap. I'll put the slide on time so we can advance to. Next one. On the plot plan there, the perimeter plot for plumbing. When you're looking at reshuffling and revising this final phase, we said, hey, this project's been going on for how many years now? We don't want to necessarily copy and paste the product that we've been using in the current phase to the final phase. Not that, we certainly want to keep the architecture, the character that it's been a long time, coming. We said, hey, scale velocity actually wasn't where we projected it would have been in the third phases. But look at that. Chris mentioned buyers want the density, but they also want a bigger lot. So perimeter estate lot, but hey, obviously, how do we get a bigger, same size lot? We can look at setbacks. So really want to talk about if you look at the top row of homes, they're the estate homes. One of the biggest changes that we looked at here is currently have the garage setback requirement of 10 feet. So we look at one garage. To maximize the square footage of the envelope. However, we like to restrict ourselves to not bringing the garage beyond the front face of the porch. We do not want a garage dominant facade. We want it either flush with the front porch or recessed back is what we like to do. In order to get the square footage that our buyers want, you have to look at that restrictive lot depth in the rear. So it is fairly aggressive change to go from 35 to 10 foot, maybe 10 foot to 20 foot is what we're looking to do. But the character of the home certainly stays the same from the third phase. The alley letter product at the cottage homes, pretty much what we're doing already, so that's a continuation. And if you slide down to that bottom row of homes, the townhomes, staying character of what we're doing, then that's just a concept plan of the multifamily. And I'll just add, I think there's one more slide if you keep going. Yeah, so originally we questioned the commercial altogether. It's feedback that we have is that commercial, you like to keep commercial out there on the front. So we said, hey, in order to keep our density count, let's put some apartments, 2 floors of apartments over commercial there potentially. And in this concept, maybe having a plaza to split the two, so access for buyers to park and access to
commercial and have like a little outdoor seating area potential. Anything else you want from me, or do you want to move on to, I think a good breaking point, maybe you can just get some feedback from the board. I think as Brian pointed out, and when it came time to revisit this portion of the project, the first step we took was just engaging with the staff, with them, and what makes sense as visual. I think we all agreed that we want the project done. Obviously, the applicant would like to see the project completed. The residents that are there today would like to see the construction end, complete the project, as I would believe the township would probably like to see the project completely. So we're trying to, again, adapt to the time that has passed and adapt to what the buyers want. And need the project in the township, and we're trying to, finish it out, making it an attractive product for the township to be proud of, as well residents to be living in. So again, before we get into any details, I'm wondering what feedback, in particular, the modifications that would be necessary to implement the plan, and then questions you may have about the project.
So the modifications, you mean, or
Yes, yeah, so, yeah, with the conditional use, there were modifications that were part of that. We anticipate that we would maybe have some of those as well, just like the original approval, but then there are some that would be a text amendment to be able to implement the plan. So that's why I had mentioned our steps would probably be first text amendment. If that's successful, move into the conditional use. If that's successful, move to the land development plan.
Thoughts from members of the board or questions?
I mean, I think, first of all, thanks for coming. Love to see the project complete after 25 plus years before Mr. Rudd wants it completed as well. Rear setback is the biggest issue with it. And by the way, I think the planning commission did a great job. I did have a chance to listen to their comments. The rear setback specifically on the estate properties on the east side, I have concerns there. There are a few properties where the side yard, I'm not sure what road this is. Room gathering spaces, text box. I'm okay with the 5 foot. It's just that one lot is so tight to the back of that house in Hartman Station. Yeah, I mean, the other comments that were made by the planning commission, actually the one comment from planning commission that I disagreed with, I think the exit that's in that red circle, I'm good with that. I think there's some traffic that would come there and make left on Hornig and go to the school, or head to Greenfield, Costco. I do have similar concerns about the intersection 23 and Hornig and those comments that were made at the planning commission. Yeah, again, my biggest concern is the rear setback. Frankly, if you're not gonna be able to fill those commercial spaces, frankly, I don't care if they're there before they are. Rather not require them and then have them empty than require them empty than not have them. There's some initial comments.
Thank you, Corey. Any other comments, feedback?
Yeah, I would say the same on the rear setback. Seems there's not much room there for any kind of barrier.
So when you're a 28 unit and 24 unit,
Are they 3 stories?
The ordinance, in the previous plan had a max of 3 stories and 44 feet for building heights. So we were originally thinking 3 stories, but then again, after feedback with the planning commission and talking with the team, we're really open to discussion, you know, what we feel is appropriate. We talked about height. If we go to the 4th story, would it feel okay in that neighborhood? So we wrote the suggestion, and we figured with that, then we can move forward and we can start to do some modeling studies and say, we just didn't want it to feel out of place.
So from a construction standpoint, I mean, it's just a question I've had. So when do the costs go up extra?
That 4th story, right?
Yeah, that 4th story. When you go from 3 to 4, it's it's not plus 25%. What is that incremental cost when you go to the?
Yeah, I think that's another comment that we also were talking with the planning commission about too, which is kind of why we think about gluing some of these buildings together as well to kind of offset a few different things. 1, increase green space, and then 2, have a lot of 4-story buildings and less of them to offset them. But like you're seeing a lot of purple buildings right now, if we can start to combine some of that, we can start to leverage that. And it makes more sense to go 4 stories if we have larger footprints. But if each and every individual one of those needs to go to 4 stories or is under that consideration, you're right, the cost starts to go drastically up.
So when you're 3 to 4, there is an incremental cost increase.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's because you think of the product availability of 4 stories, you're starting to consider elevators. Whereas a 3-story building, it's considered, garden style walk-up buildings. And, that's a lot of cost.
Part that can come up from the planning commission about parking for those buildings. And the comment about trying to increase green space, we said, well, if we reduce the parking, that's a potential tool that we could use to try to increase that green space. So the ordinance right now is 2 spaces per unit for the multifamily, but we said, as we get deeper into architecture, if we start to identify how many units are just 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, maybe we can look at, maybe does that go to 1.75 per unit? Again, just thought through ideas to try to reduce that impervious cover, which then helps us on the stormwater side too. So it's, again, all these things together.
So when you do studies on what the market is buying, aren't you looking in backwards in a mirror and then assuming that's going to continue in the future?
Well, that's always a tough question.
They've been wrong 3 times.
Keystone has, as we have other communities in this area, so we're actively selling there. We tell you what we sold this past weekend.
Yeah, okay.
So we're looking at, yes, fast data, Devon Creek, we're also looking at current data.
So has that changed dramatically over the last 20 years since we started this project?
For sure, yeah. It's
Housing stock.
I mean, a lot has happened in the economy. So
What's the biggest change in those 20 years? I'm just.
like cost.
Yeah, right.
Well, the big thing with, when we're talking, the cost per square foot goes down the bigger you build. So there's more value with bigger. So I think it's one of the reasons buyers are looking for bigger. It feels like there's more value in that square footage. So that's part of it. A little part of that, but yeah, I think like we already mentioned, buyers are fine with density. They're fine with smaller lots, but they still want the square footage. When I say square footage, I'm really talking about footprint. Either it's a family that wants a bigger home, that wants a bigger footprint, or the bigger footprint where we have a move down buyer that wants a first floor owner suite, which requires a bigger footprint. So that's why we're looking at the setbacks.
And single people living alone, there's still a market out there for single bedroom units.
Not all single family as much, apartments for sure. And then, the smaller product on the inside, we don't do any 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms with the smallest home.
One more question. So your impervious on your street alone, it looks like there's going to be a decrease in impervious.
Compared to the original plan?
Yeah.
Map that out, or I'm just,
We're looking at it now, but the street widths would remain the same as the original roof line. We would still have the bump outs for on-street parking in appropriate areas. So it's probably close, and again, even the idea of eliminating the stream crossing, you're really going to swing that what asphalt's out, so that's probably a net, zero in terms of impervious.
thoughts, Mike, or Ted? I would agree with the setback issue. I think that's gonna be a problem.
Does that change the conversation at all in the setback?
It would start changing for me.
That would be a starting point.
I like to have a point of reference and kind of go out and see it for myself, like when those developments and what those yards look like. I mean, I have an idea in my head, but that's so tight. How are we not going to have all kinds of issues with that? What they thought was going to be there and.
It's a fair point. The rear yard for all the unit types is 18 feet. I might say not multifamily, but single family and so forth. So that's, ballpark, I guess. But it is that river. That river that originally had 35. You're right.
We also talked about the alley loads. They're currently garage to the alley, I think it's 17 or 18 feet. However, we have townhomes with alley and load garages that are, I think, only 6 feet off the alley. Basically, what it does is says, hey, we actually don't want cars back on the alley. It forces buyers to pull into their garage and use their garage for parking. So it could be a potential solution on the alley loaded single families where we can reduce the alley space and then get a little bit more space on the backside of those singles that you're concerned about. So that could be a trade-off.
I think the setback on the perimeter is the key. Setbacks on the alley, I don't have any concerns with. I don't have concerns about that. Side yard setback, I don't have any opinions on. I'm fine with reducing that. I'd like to see a mix of commercial in there, whether that's commercial on the bottom, apartments on top, or build them in a way that could be flexible. And if we have those, can we get pedestrian access to those from the front? So those are the connection. The more we can connect with the other neighborhoods, the better. The more we can connect the trails to the elementary school and the other neighborhoods, the better.
Depending on what those commercials, that's got almost a drought of some commercial space in there. That side, but you got all these new customers, certain needs.
There's a lack of successful projects to look at. So that's, we're a little shy on that because, we can give you a whole list of problematic commercial projects, but, we're obviously planning. We obviously have a lot of concerns about the open space, what we do with the open space. Seems a little maybe premature to go through that too much, but I just wanted to mention it, that we certainly are thinking ahead and thinking about all of that as well. But happy to walk through it when you want, but I know we're trying to get across the, setbacks and get the nuts and bolts of this across the finish line.
As far as the garage setback piece, I mean, my preference is for the way it is, where the garage is set back from the house. But I'd be open to aligning it, letting the porch stick out. I just don't want garages sticking out.
No, we don't. I agree. I think the design's shown was pretty good.
By buildings or maybe that whole building.
I'm fine combining and going up, especially if you can free up some green space as a result of that. And I'm fine reducing parking. I don't think you need 2 spaces. The goal is for this area is to make it with the commercial and the connectivity is not make it as car dominant. And you'll have robo taxis in there in 3 years anyway. I agree on combining apartments. Oh.
How hard would it be to create flex space in the modern flex from local to, is that a challenge or?
Would that be preferred by the developers?
It's possible.
It's not that we would design, we want it to look commercial and, you know, that's a modeling at some point in time and maybe it's more residential.
All right, any further feedback? You have good direction?
It's helpful, appreciate that.
Any clarification needed from staff? Okay, thank you for your time. All right, any quick updates on Park Foundation?
The PRPS Foundation did get back to Lisa, and they noted that at this point in time, they don't have capacity to have this type of growth under that foundation umbrella. They are looking to have that in the future, but not at this point in time. And so staff is looking at now all of our options again.
No, good. All right, any other items from the board? Jump ahead to action items. 9A, ordinance hearing for streetlight assessment and billing.
So typically the township bills streetlights for those properties that have such a light. And it's based on the linear footage of the property frontage. That's done typically in February. That wasn't done this year because we've been working with Fulton Bank to have our utility bills go there under a lockbox. We've finalized that and can now move forward. Given that it hasn't been billed at all this year, it'll be billed in two pieces, one in July and one in October. The ordinance in front of you indicates that, and then it would go to quarterly billing in 2026 with the sewer and stormwater bills.
Have you received any questions about the street light, not receiving the bill or?
Yes, many.
We need a motion to advertise the ordinance.
The ordinance has been advertised.
So this is just so this is the hearing, so I need to open the hearing. Hereby opening the hearing. Any comments? Board on hearing? Any public comment on that?
I hear you.
Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close the hearing.
Motion a second, to close the hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to take action on the ordinance.
Motion to approve the ordinance for streetlight assessment and billing.
Second. Motion by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Gallagher. Any board discussion, public comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Motion passes. Item 9B, selection of hearing date regarding the parking fee in lieu of subdivision land development ordinance amendment.
So this was sent to Lancaster County Planning Commission for review. It was also sent to the Township Planning Commission for review. We have received the written comments from Lancaster County Planning Commission. The Township Planning Commission moved this forward for approval, and we did get written comments from Upper Lake Hawk Township, which indicated they had no comment on the proposed amendment. Looking at your July 14th meeting for a hearing to be held during the meeting, as we just did for the streetlight.
We need a motion to set that or advertise the.
Yeah, if you want to make a motion to move forward with advertising of the hearing.
Motion that we, for the advertising, for the, hearing for the park fee in lieu of subdivision and land development ordinance amendment.
All right, moved by Mr. Thornton, second by Mr. Rudd. Any more discussion, public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstention, the motion passes. At 9C, selection of hearing date regarding the family farm stand zoning ordinance amendment.
So this amendment too has gone to Lancaster County Planning Commission and the Township Planning Commission. Lancaster County Planning Commission has provided their written comments. The Township Planning Commission at their June 10th meeting, thank you, indicated they would like more time to consider this. And so we'll look to take action at their July meeting. We would probably need to have this outside of the regular meeting of the board. And so consider August 4th prior to the board meeting. If that works for everyone, and then I will also get in touch with the applicant.
The reason for having an outside of board meeting is just the.
I think you're gonna have a lot of public present and feedback.
Yes.
6 on that, on August 4th.
I think 6 would work. We want to do
5:30.
5:30. 5 work for you, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yeah. What day of the week is it? That's
Yeah.
So 5 o'clock, August 4th.
To, we could get some food and hopefully we're done and we have time to relax between meetings, but if we can take 2 hours, it could take an hour, it could take 2 hours. All right, I think 5 o'clock works.
You're gonna contact.
I will contact Mr. Smucker.
You need a motion to advertise that ordinance.
Motion to advertise, family farm stand zoning ordinance amendment.
Sorry. Motion by Mr. Rudd, second by Mr. Thornton. Any board discussion, staff comment, public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions, motion passes. 9D, selection of hearing date regarding integrated business campus zoning ordinance amendment.
You just accepted this amendment at your last meeting. This went to Lancaster County Planning Commission. They will not review until August 11th. The applicant has asked that you consider holding the hearing August 18th during your regular board meeting.
That work for everyone? I'll think that one.
Yeah, I may miss that meeting. I may be away, likely be, but.
Okay.
It sounds good if I'm here.
Do we need a motion for this one, Tara?
To advertise.
I'll get a motion to advertise.
To advertise the.
Moved by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Rudd. Any board discussion, public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Motion passes. 9E, approval of school resource officer memorandum of understanding with Conestoga Valley School Districts.
2 years ago, the board approved 2 different agreements. One was through the Department of Education, and that encompassed the majority of the mandatory and discretionary reporting requirements that school employees need to abide by. And then the other agreement was the typical agreement that the township has with CV School District regarding financial commitment, regarding who's in charge and how the SRO functions. The new head of security operations, I believe is his title, has come to me and asked that we combine the 2 agreements. And so we have done that. The agreement ends currently on June 30th of this year. And so this would extend it for 2 years at the same financial commitment, with the school district paying 70% and the township picking up 30%. The other change in the agreement was indicating the 3 reasons why an SRO would have to transport a student. And this is so that the SRO isn't put into any sort of situation where they're asked to transport a student outside of these 3 situations.
They follow, I'm assuming, the same procedure that our current officers do when they're transporting a minor.
They will need to follow the same procedure.
Which we do when we pick up someone who's violating a curfew ordinance, for example. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the school resource officer memorandum of understanding.
Make a motion to approve this, the SRO memorandum of understanding.
Motion by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Thornton. Any board discussion, public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions, motion passes. Item 9F, approval of easements for Willow Road culvert replacement and expansion.
These are two easements that the board would be approving, with one with the Kreider family and one with High Associates. This is to replace and expand the culvert at Willow Road across from Oscar's Pet Resort there. And this is, the culvert needs to be replaced. It's in poor condition. And the expansion would be to accommodate the walking trail between lot 1 and lot 5 of Green. All the design has been done, all the permitting has been done, and so we would look to bid this in late summer or early fall of this year.
Separate motion for each.
I think we can take both together.
Any motion?
Should approve the easements for Willow Road culvert replacement and expansion with High Associates and Cassie and Kirby Kreider.
Second. Motion by Mr. Thornton, second by Mr. Gallagher. Any board discussion, comment, public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions, motion passes. At 9G, approval of easement documents regarding the Lincoln Highway Streetscape project.
You've had these on your agenda for the last 2 meetings, and so we have 2 more. Thanks to Hutch's hard work on these. 2280 Lincoln Highway East and 2307 Lincoln Highway East.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the easement documents for the Lincoln Highway Streetscape project, and those addresses being 2280 Lincoln Highway East and 2307 Lincoln Highway East.
Motion by Mr. Rudd, second by Mr. Thornton. Any board discussion, public comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions, the motion passes. Manager's report.
So the utility billing changes are finally coming. So after working with Bolton for a long time. And that there are lots that we can send the utility bills to, this will go out on Facebook, on the website, of course, on the utility bills that will be July. And so for those that were concerned with sending their bills to Souderton,
Yeah.
yes, they will have a Lancaster address.
Excellent.
But move on to the
Budget timeline.
budget timeline that I provided is that the first workshop of the board, which is kind of overarching and making sure that township staff's budget goals and the Board of Supervisors budget goals are headed in the same direction. It's scheduled for August 20th, beginning at 3 p.m. Working from there and seeing when the budget needs to be adopted, which is December 15th, 2025 at your regular meeting. We've established the timeline there for you.
All right. Any questions for staff on the budget timeline? All right. Any other items for the board? Any final public comment?
I just want to thank the staff and the board for everything you do. I wanted to do maybe in other meetings of my time in the community here recently, but I know you have a lot, you juggle a lot of feelings and dealing with people's budgets and with community members. So I don't know how I'll be here, but in my experience, I haven't heard anybody say it. So thank you from me. Thank you.
And thank you for coming to multiple meetings.
I'm building my family. I know it's late. I'm not going to bore you with my details, but I'm growing and trying to learn a little bit as well. Appreciate you taking the time to hear me out. Here and
Smoking seats up here in a couple of years, you better.
So is the decisions there. With that, thank you.
Thanks for in a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Gallagher, second by Mr. Thornton. All those all those favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passing to see that 14.